This spectacular photograph is the Soyuz MS-15 mission, blasting off from Kazakhstan on its way to the ISS. On board are 4 astronauts, including Jessica Meir of NASA, who's still on board, and Haza Al-Mansouri, the first astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. Just stunning. It's photographs like these that have convinced me that we humans belong in space, and we need to explore beyond low Earth orbit. We need to explore places like the Korolev crater on Mars, just filled with tons of water ice. Or the Valles Marineris, which could stretch from New York to San Francisco, the largest canyon in the solar system. We need to debunk those who say that spaceflight throughout the solar system is impossible and stretch out to the stars. I mean, this is why I started this channel. I wanted to take this message and spread it out to the world, but even though I've got almost 1,000 views now, I've just got 26 subscribers. And I've tried everything. Lego giveaway, and just need to get 100 subscribers for that, but only got a couple of weeks left. Oh, who am I kidding? I just don't measure up to these other people. I mean, look at this microphone. I mean, come on. Who's gonna listen to that? I mean, maybe if I could get it a little closer to myself, if I had an extension cord or something, like that. That might help out a little bit, but I mean, I don't know anything about how to edit, and I mean, come on, I can't do any fancy video effects or anything like that. Maybe I should just give up. Wait a minute!
Hey! What's this lying around shit?
Well, what the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
War's over, man. Wormer dropped the big one.
What? Over? Did you say over? Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
Germans? Forget it, he's rolling.
It ain't over now. Because when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Who's with me? Let's go! Come on! Ah!
Let's go! Another 74 subscriptions in 2 weeks! We can do it! We can do it! Oh yeah! Who are you? How'd you get in my house? What hospital? My kids called you? No, wait. Put the taser away. Put the...
"50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
Very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how."
Good evening, and welcome to episode 7 of The Angry Astronaut. I'd like to apologize and assure you that I am fully medicated and completely all right now. Really, I am. So, as the video may have suggested, and also the title that I've given you, I'm going to be talking about going back to the moon. Most of you know that that's the plan anyway. It's called Project Artemis, named after the sister of Apollo, the name of the god that we used for our missions to the moon, where we sent only men, of course, in the early 1970s until we idiotically canceled the program. The idea of Artemis comes in a number of stages, some of which I'm absolutely thrilled about, and some of which I absolutely despise. Let's talk about the positive stuff first, shall we? So, the plan is to not just send astronauts to the moon for a few days on a ridiculously expensive rocket and then return them. Instead, the idea is to send astronauts to an orbiting station that we call the Lunar Gateway to stay for a much longer time, also at a ridiculously high expense. And no, wait, I said I was going to be positive about this. Okay, let's try this again. We send them to an orbiting station called the Lunar Gateway. And then from the Gateway, we send a ship called the Orion back and forth to the moon as needed. The Lunar Gateway is essentially a miniature ISS being built by NASA, Roscosmos, the ESA, the Canadians, the Japanese Space Agency. Quite a project, actually. It has experimental laboratories, habitation modules, and it bears a great deal of resemblance to a certain project that I was working on that you now no longer have an opportunity to take a guess at. But pretty similar, isn't it? The Gateway travels in a highly elliptical orbit, bringing it very close to the Earth when we want to send a mission to the moon, and then orbiting closer to the moon when we want to send a mission down to the surface. But it serves a lot of other purposes besides just being a way station. The Lunar Gateway is supposed to provide an environment that is as far removed from the Earth as possible, while still being reachable in an emergency. But the whole idea is to teach human beings how to live in deep space without easy support from the Earth. In case there's an emergency of some kind, especially a medical one, it's going to be a lot more difficult to send up any kind of help. And that's the entire point, because missions to Mars are going to be completely removed of any kind of assistance, and we need to learn how to live in that kind of environment first, or so the theory goes. In addition to that, what happens if a lunar or deep space mission brings back a bacteria or virus that's decidedly unfriendly? The Gateway would act as sort of an isolation ward. As a matter of fact, that might be its most important use. But actually, I think it has an even more important use than that. Perhaps the best use for the Deep Space Gateway, or the Lunar Gateway, or whatever we're going to call it, is what's been described as a gas station on the way to deep space. But what NASA wants to use for their own deep space explorations could actually be used for private exploration instead. Let me try to explain. Here's how Elon Musk wants to refuel his Starship right now. Okay, nice dramatic lead up. The Starship atop the BFR, or Big Frickin' Rocket, most powerful rocket in the history of mankind, 41 Raptor engines producing more thrust than any rocket in history. Beautiful animation, wouldn't you say? And so, once they've achieved orbit, the BFR detaches and makes its way back into the atmosphere to land. Nice, gentle descent. Or so the theory goes. Nice and smooth, and the BFR lands pretty much exactly from where it took off from. Meanwhile, the Starship is up in orbit, and another BFR, or the same BFR rather, brings up another Starship, a tanker, if you will, and the two dock with one another. According to Elon Musk, this is going to be easier than a docking with the International Space Station. And so the fuel is transferred in orbit. And then once the fueling is completed, the Starship, with 150 tons of cargo or 100 passengers, is on its way to Mars. Nice, smooth, and beautiful. Here's the problem with your plan, Elon. Because you have to use so much of the tanker's Starship fuel in order to get into position for a refueling, it will require at least half a dozen refueling efforts in order to be able to accomplish the maneuver. That means half a dozen BFRs, all launching from whatever launch pads you think you might have available over a very short frame of time, or reusing the same BFR 6 times in rapid succession and refueling that way. Now, Elon, I don't care how reusable you say your system is. There is no damn way that you are going to be able to land the BFR, spend a few hours working on it, and launch it again. You have not been able to do that with a single one of your Falcon 9 boosters. Not even close. So how do you intend to accomplish that many launches of the BFR in that short of an amount of time? Each one of those ships has 41 engines. Therefore, 41 chances for something to go wrong, to say nothing of the rest of the craft. There are too many things that could go wrong with this problem. Would it not be a lot easier, a whole lot easier as a matter of fact, if the fuel was already waiting for you right here? What if we had a fuel manufacturing depot on the moon, because the methane fuel that your Raptor rockets run off of could be manufactured on the moon, not quite as easily as it could be on Mars, but nevertheless, it's very possible. Manufacture the fuel on the moon, have that transferred to the station, and have a full tank of fuel waiting for you when you arrive at the Lunar Gateway. No multiple dockings, no worrying about weather conditions on Earth, no worrying about one of your BFRs failing or blowing up as you're attempting to launch one of your tankers. You would just have one refueling maneuver. Now, could the Lunar Gateway handle that? Remember, the Lunar Gateway is designed to be expandable, to accept new modules. But what could possibly be large enough to accommodate that much fuel? Well, as a matter of fact, Bigelow Aerospace is designing some massive expandable modules, which are designed to be launched aboard the Starship. So that's one example. And since the moon has 1/6 the gravity and no weather problems, it would be a lot easier to get the fuel to the station in the first place. In fact, you wouldn't even need rockets to send the fuel into lunar orbit. You could use a lunar mass driver to send the cargo, something I'll handle in future episodes. So, we've got a brand new station orbiting the moon that can be used to dispatch expeditions to the moon's surface. It can be used as an isolation ward for diseases that could wipe out the human species. It can teach us how to live in deep space. It can teach us new ways of resisting cosmic radiation that we've never had to deal with before. I forgot to mention that part. It can act, most importantly, as a refueling depot for the Starship or any other vessel that wants to travel into deep space. I mean, what's not to like? Well, there's one particular faction that doesn't like this solution at all, and they're led by people like Buzz Aldrin, They believe instead in a concept called the moon direct approach. Now, according to these boneheads, I mean great American heroes, this approach to landing on the moon is completely inefficient. It requires 3 vehicles instead of 1. You need the rocket to get you to the lunar gateway, you need the lunar gateway itself, and then you need the Orion capsule to land you on the moon. Now this makes perfect sense, coming from somebody who landed on the moon in the early 1970s when landing on the moon was the only objective. But this is not the only objective, Buzz. And by the way, you are a horrible dancer, too. Okay, all right. Yes, I just insulted a major American icon, but he's just wrong. And let me try to explain why. Our objective is not just to go to the moon here. If we try that approach again, flying rockets directly to the moon and coming back and trying to build a base in the meantime, this is doomed to fail, just as the Apollo project was. Why? Well, if I can try to make it clear, it's tough to understand why, but space stations have a certain kind of longevity. The International Space Station, for example, has been there now for almost 2 decades, through multiple administrations, and nobody wants to be the president that shuts it down and lets it tumble back in and burn up in the atmosphere. No one wants to do that, and no one's going to want to do that to the Lunar Gateway either. Especially since you have so many other countries so thoroughly invested in it. So why is this little station so advantageous compared to just flying directly to the moon and building a base there? Well, as I said, we've already talked about the political advantages, and the fact that we've already committed to it, and not just us, but a number of other countries. But also, most importantly, in my opinion, the refueling aspect to it. If you are sending a ship to Mars, or any vessel into deep space, beyond lunar orbit, it's going to be far easier to refuel it at an orbiting station than it's going to be to launch a refueling tug of any kind. Whether that launch be from the moon, which would be admittedly easier because the gravity well would be easier to escape, or from Earth. The whole point is you want something orbiting the moon that has a refueling station readily available for any vessels that are about to proceed into deep space. And why can we just not do that from the ISS? Once again, gravity well plays a big issue here. If we just attach a refueling module onto the ISS, you still have to supply it from Earth in that case. Therefore, sending a refueling tug up to the ISS having to escape Earth's gravity well, a much more difficult and dangerous operation. Why not do it from the moon? There's just too many advantages to this station. It's why I like it so much. But, unfortunately, there is one aspect to Artemis. Oh, by the way, the whole Orion thing, I'm going to deal with that separately. I have mixed feelings on the Orion capsule, to be honest. I may deal with that in a separate episode. But what's the most important thing about Artemis is the one factor that may destroy it forever. Yeah, I think some of you saw this coming. The most powerful rocket in NASA's history. The pride and joy of the Boeing Corporation and everybody else contributing to it. Almost none of it reusable, an endless supply of jobs and political clout for those who support it. And without a doubt, the death knell of the entire Artemis project. Because our politicians and our people will be only so willing to pay for something like this for so long before they give up on it. And the fact that we haven't realized that yet is beyond comprehension. Oh, look at those engines. And all of that theoretical thrust. And just about ready. And off it goes on its simulated flight. Remarkable. Spectacular. And absolutely certain to sabotage the entire Artemis project. This is the SLS, or the Space Launch System. Or more appropriately called, the piece of shit, overpriced Space Launch System. Until next time, stay angry about space.